So I always want to share other content creators that I found useful, not just on a financial journey, but on a holistic journey where money meets mindset, meets our personal lives, whatever that means to you, meets our health, etc. So with this recommendation, I want to follow up on the show notes for the very, very first episode of the podcast. So I linked to a book on the blog, which wasn't a money book. I didn't manage to mention it in the episode itself. But it's a book about building emotional resilience in children. And I included that because I had talked about autism in that podcast episode. And I had talked about another couple's podcast interview about their autistic son who's now 18 and had overcome a lot of challenges. I thought it was relevant because my immediate association when I think about my childhood was I think of the parts that were stressful because of my autism, and I didn't know I was autistic. And that's not to say that that I'm not grateful for any part of my childhood and that there wasn't any part of it that I didn't enjoy. But it is what it is. That's what comes to mind. So even though it's not money related on the surface, like I say, every goal is a financial goal. I think it's difficult to separate mental health from finances. Obviously, if your brain's wired a bit differently too, that will affect your approach to money, mental health, literally everything. Now, the author also has a podcast, so this is a double recommendation. I think even if you don't have kids, there's 2 episodes of her podcast that I want to single out because they really sort of jumped out at me as applying to adults too. And one episode is called How to Help Kids Express Their Feelings, and it's about naming your emotions, because what I learned from this is that emotional labeling helps us process emotions. Now, I find that really hard. And I think this is related to autism. So it's not uncommon to not be great at articulating how you feel or how anyone else feels. And when I say not great, like it's not like, well, you should just work harder, like aim for the net. As far as I know, the wrong part of my brain lights up. And that makes it very hard for me to like discern facial expressions. And it's not that I don't have any empathy. So like if I see you crying, I'll cry. But I probably won't be able to explain why I'm upset or you're upset. But I've committed that I'm going to give the exercises in the episode in question a go. Now, you might just be very typically British and repressed, therefore, and not good at discussing your emotions either, with yourself even. So I'd give the jar exercise a go from this podcast episode. I can definitely imagine how, if you're able to isolate times in the past when you felt a certain way, then you have more chance of being able to recreate that when needed. And if you're trying to practice a gratitude habit, as I've talked about, then I think sort of like being able to conjure up that feeling of, other things that you're already thankful for. If you're having a bad day and you're having difficulty practicing gratitude, for instance, being able to think about other times when you felt good about something and you've been able to name things that went well, I think that would help too. So the book in question is called Create Your Own Calm. I reckon if you go and listen to the podcast episode and take a look at the book is meant for kids, but I won't tell anyone if you like filling out the pages too. I mean, there's a whole science behind adult colouring books, so sometimes stuff that was once aimed at kids we can get satisfaction from as adults too. Especially if, like me, you've been treated like you're 6 going on 60 since you were 6. I reckon if you did the jar exercise, you'd be able to calm down more easily in future whenever you get stressed by training yourself to remember times in the past when you felt calm and learning what it is that chills you out. And I reckon that because I've tried it and it actually works. So in case you missed it, the book's called Create Your Own Calm by Becky Goddard Hill. The illustrator is Claire Forrest. I'll link to it if you want to get it. I'll link to the previous time I mentioned it if you want a bit more context. And then the podcast that goes with it is called Emotionally Healthy Kids. I said there were 2 episodes that kind of reached out of the screen and shook me, and the other is about gratitude, huh? How very appropriate. And I'm on board with this, obviously, no kids required. So Becky quotes the research behind this. But if you can practice daily gratitude at any age, it changes your outlook so much. I'd go as far as to say it makes you calmer and happier, but I might not be identifying those emotions correctly half the time. Come back to me after I've practiced labelling my emotions. So even on a day where things are out of control or going wrong, per se, you can take back some control by saying that, that it's not going wrong. You can sort of find what you're still thankful for. So usually, like, I'm thankful that I have a roof over my head at all. Even if I don't live in a mansion, I don't need it. I'm warm and I'm dry. I'm not warm right now. That's because I'm refusing to turn the heating on because it dries out my voice while I'm recording. I'll be warm later, it's fine. I have the choice, which is the important thing. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I'm gonna make time to cook from scratch this evening, even though my to-do list is still really long. And if I ever say to you, oh, I've been very busy, and you're like, I don't know why Bear thinks she's so important and too busy to talk to me. I do think I'm important, and you should think that you're important too. So given the choice between like another hour of replying to emails, which just sparks off like another volley of replies you have to reply to, I'll take that hour to look after myself, because no one else can look after you better than you can, and you can't help anyone else if you don't look after yourself. So I'll say thanks therefore for the smallest things if it's been a whirlwind of a day or I received bad news, and it does make all the difference. Becky also included me in a blog post called 100 Ways to Create Your Own Calm, and as you can guess, there are 99 savvy souls included in that besides me, so I'll link to that too. One of the other bloggers that took part said how much they love reading to calm down, and it turns out that one of the tips in Becky's book, not to get too meta, but reading apparently reduces your cortisol instantly. Since her book is about being calm, I imagine it reduces your cortisol by twice as much, because that's how science works. And no, it isn't. I just made that up. But you get the drift. I think that partly explains also why books have always been one of my refuges too. So if you want me to do more about book spending, how to enjoy books without blowing the bank, let me know. I do tend to mention books quite frequently without even trying. That's book lovers for you. I've got votes to record more about spending on entertainment, and I've got a vote to follow up on the money-making question I answered previously, because I can share what that person ended up doing and why they didn't pursue the most profitable suggestions that I made, possibly because it's not always just about earning the most amount of money. Do subscribe if you want to catch those, and cast your vote if you want me to record those particularly also, or need help with anything else that's come up so far. And thank you to Becky also just on a personal level for extending the hand of kindness and offering to talk to me about my diagnosis, because she has a lot of understanding about autism. I mean, everyone I've told, that's not to say that I have no one to talk to, because everyone I told after getting diagnosed, no matter how long they'd known me, were really positive in their response. So I'm also thankful to be among people who are understanding. And if you don't have that right now, how might you change your surroundings and find someone to talk to? I think the most positive corners of my niche online, which is content creators who talk about all aspects of money, I do think it is just a corner that's filled with creative people who want as many other people as possible to live their best life. Like, I've seen someone being kind of snide before about Martin Lewis, like, oh, this guy's just obsessed with money, there's more to life. And they're kind of missing the point, which is that, you know, it's not that he's saying that money's, in fact, I think he actually has like a mantra where he sort of says, like, I'm not trying to say that money will make you happy, but definitely, like, when you're in financial hardship, it can make you miserable. So if there's a way to solve that, and just to be positive and talk about like what's possible rather than assuming that everything's doom and gloom, that's why I like the money niche anyway. I just think that it's full of can-do attitudes. And that's something to be thankful for too. The internet is good if you look in the right places.